Kenneth Walker and Garrett Wilson top the list of the 10 biggest veteran losers after the 2026 NFL Draft. I'll tell you why on this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football. And making us your first listen today, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer from SportingNews.com. My co-host, Michelle Majuk of NFL.com, is off today. On yesterday's show, Michelle broke down Malik Neighbors' Cam Scadabo being among the top 10 biggest veteran winners based on the results of the 2026 NFL Draft, with the Giants not doing too much. Today, I'll offer the flip side, looking at those players who lost more potential production this season from their team's rookie class. We'll get right into it here in a moment. Thanks again for making us your first listen, and a lot of good stuff coming at you this off season. But we got to continue to react to the draft. Again, the Giants didn't do a lot of drafting there that would make you feel bad about their guys, but the Chiefs did throw us a curveball. So the number one guy on the list has to be Kenneth Walker III. Now, he was sitting pretty. He was making a lot of money. He was the top free agent running back after winning Super Bowl 60 MVP for the Seahawks. But unfortunately, the Chiefs are blowing up their backfield completely. They're moving on from Isaiah Pacheco now with the Lions and Kareem Hunt, and trying to fix this running game with the offensive line strengths they have with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. So they need to run the ball more, take pressure off Patrick Mahomes, returning from the knee injury. They're going to try to complement that with better defense. They focused a lot of their draft, we know, on defense with Mansour Delane, Peter Woods, R. Mason Thomas. So they got some reinforcements there, but you cannot forget about Emmett Johnson, the running back they took out of Nebraska. Now, really, there was a separation. Jordyn Price was the clear number two. Jeremiah Love was the clear number one. There was a little bit of separation between those two guys, then a drop off to the rest of these guys. And it really was a team personal preference. Now, I loved Emmett Johnson a lot, had a lot of speed there at Nebraska, really ran well. Obviously, proximity to Kansas City helped his scouting a little bit there in the later rounds. Emmett Johnson is a potential three-down back. He's very athletic, can handle the zone blocking system that you see with Humphrey and Smith, maybe opening up holes. So not the best development for Walker, because again, Walker did have limitations last year. I know he's a Super Bowl MVP and he had to carry a big workload after Zach Charbonnet went down in the playoffs, but he's not the best pass catcher and he's not the best pass blocker. Emmett Johnson can fill those voids here. So I think when you look at Andy Reid, early in his career, he had the guy like Brian Westbrook in Philadelphia or Jamal Charles, also throw in LaShawn McCoy and Kareem Hunt early in his career, where these guys would be workhorse backs. But since he's kind of embraced the committee approach, the modern NFL, having different skill sets for different guys. So Walker definitely is getting the money. He's still on the board as the RB11. I think it's a little rich now that Emmett Johnson is lingering. We'll see how this competition is there. Brashard Smith is not going to totally go away either. He's a good change of pace back. So, again, getting Emmett Johnson in this mix, it's not just a throwaway pick in the later rounds. It might seem that way based on where Emmett Johnson was drafted outside of day two, but really he's a good three-down talent. And this running back class, like a bunch of guys were the same. The Jonah Coleman, Mike Washington Jr., even the two guys that went earlier, Kalen Black, the one running back taken on day two. And then going back, I mean, you had Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen at Penn State. So a lot of these guys were similar. We're going to get into some of them here and how they can compete for jobs. But definitely Emmett Johnson arriving in Kansas City squashes a little bit of the Kenneth Walker enthusiasm. Right now, I think it's fair that he's a high-end RB2, borderline RB1. But just beware. We'll track Johnson because, again, this could be a bigger split than you think. And look, we had a similar situation last year, right? Where Najee Harris got a decent investment for 1 year. It was a little bit different for $9 million from the Chargers, and Amari and Hampton took over once Harris went down. Walker, again, is off injured here. So you can really see Johnson maybe taking advantage of that should Walker be on the shelf. He had multiple injuries there in Seattle that would open the door for Zach Charbonnet. So we're going to watch for that development to happen here. And again, let's not forget what Walker was before he was needed to carry that massive workload for the Seahawks all the way to the Super Bowl. All right, the next guy that you have to put on this list is Garrett Wilson. You can look at this two ways. They did go out and get a quarterback, traded for Geno Smith. So Geno Smith, coming full circle, is the Jets starting quarterback. But in the first round of the draft, they did invest twice after the David Bailey edge rusher pick at number 2 overall on skill position, particularly catch passers or pass catchers, how you want to break it down. And when you look at that combination, you did get Omar Cooper Jr. That was the second pick, and Kenyon Sadiq was the first pick. So you got a tight end, you got a wide receiver. This is going to keep Wilson from dominating the target share. I know Sadiq and Cooper are rookies, but still they're very capable rookies. And Garrett Wilson is no longer in a position to just be a target hog on this team. They legitimately have to spread the ball around. Geno Smith has in the past locked in 2 receivers. We see that in the past with Seattle and Jackson Smith and the Jigba getting him going, but he did spread the ball pretty well. And Sadiq and Cooper, both first round talents, athletic guys, they're going to be factored into the offense sooner rather than later. So Wilson has legitimate help, which is good to help him get open, but you get 2 mouths now that you're adding. Like if it was just Cooper or Sadiq, you might feel a little bit better about Garrett Wilson right now. But right now, he is at wide receiver 17 on the board. So really going in the wrong direction away from where he was drafted pretty high. Like he was going wide receiver 7 to 10 in that range a couple years ago. Now you had that quarterback mess post Aaron Rodgers. It didn't quite work out with Rodgers because he went down with the big knee injury right there with that connection. And now you're looking at more options here for the Jets' new look offense with Frank Reich, and he's going to figure out how to get Sadiq and Cooper involved right away as rookies to help Smith, and then Wilson again. It's not going to be that same target hog we're used to. Don't forget about Breece Hall still in the backfield as a very adept receiver. They also have a second tight end that's a carryover in Mason Taylor. So this is going to be a more diversified targets offense there in New York, and that definitely is going to hurt Wilson. He's going to have to get it done with a little bit more efficiency and scoring on an offense in transition in progress. Now, the last big loser that I want to mention here, this is the number 3 loser, is DK Metcalf. And look, his value is not very high right now. He's a wide receiver 3. He's ranked about 34 through 38, so barely being drafted as a starting guy. But I don't understand Michael Pittman being so far behind him. This is a hand-picked new offense in Pittsburgh with Mike McCarthy, presumably still with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. It's a new system. He's bringing in guys that he wants in that system. So it wasn't just the pick of Pittman, who can be a big slot or threat outside. The former Colt, they traded for him with that ability. And then Jeremy Bernard, they were really tied there to Mekhi Lemon. If they'd taken Lemon, it would have been really not good for DK Metcalf. But it's bad enough here with Jeremy Bernard to line up the slot and make plays, and it really helped this passing game spread it out a little bit more with Rodgers and go away from guys he knows and goes McCarthy with people that are familiar targets for him. So Pittman and Bernard are definitely going to be in the mix. I think DK Metcalf, as we saw with the way it went down with Pittsburgh, I think they see him as a volatile threat vertically the same way that George Pickens was, only a little bit older and a little bit more inconsistent. Pickens ended up having the breakout year. That had to be hard to watch, but Metcalf is definitely lesser in that role. So now you translate what they were doing there with Seattle and looking at what Metcalf meant to that team. You still had a lot of things happen on the outside. You had some other capable receivers, namely Tyler Lockett at that time. So when you look at the Steelers, again, blowing things up, they wanted to go out and get Pittman and Bernard for this new offense. I think it will definitely hurt the way that Metcalf is looked at here going forward with Rodgers or any other quarterback in 2026. We do have several more players to get into. We do have a quarterback and tight end we'll talk about, a little bit different on why they're a loser. We'll do all that here to get into the middle and wrap up today's show. Today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Rugiet. The NFL draft has come and gone. Where preparation met opportunity, every decision mattered. It's all about being ready when your moment comes, and definitely those prospects were, and those teams were in the war rooms as well. That same mindset applies off the field too. That's when Rugiet comes in. Rugiet offers treatments designed to help you feel ready and confident when it matters most. Their top option, Rugiet Ready, is a mint that dissolves under your tongue with clinically proven ingredients and works quickly, often about 15 minutes, and can last up to 36 hours. They also offer Go Long, designed to help with both performance and control. It's all about showing up at your best, whatever your moment is. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and gifting 15% off your ED treatment. That's Rugiet, Rugiet, Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL to get 15% off. Rugiet Performance Medicine for Men. All right, it is time to look at the quarterback that's spotlighted as a loser here. Don't forget to check out the Everyday Club for ad-free episodes and access to group chat with Michelle and I and other listeners of the show on Discord. That'll be important as we get closer to the draft, so we'll have a very revved up pre-fantasy football redraft league draft chat to really get there. So tap the link on the show notes or go to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com to learn more about joining the Everyday Club. You'll get those ad-free episodes and again, direct access to Michelle and I and the other Locked On experts there in that chat. It can be really rewarding for you come fantasy football draft time. Okay, let us look at Baker Mayfield. Now, if you were listening to Michelle's show, and I hope you did, he brought up Emeka Ibuka being a winner, and he was, because the Bucs were tied a lot to Kenny and Sadiq, who ended up going to the Jets. They were tied to some wide receivers potentially early as well. But Emeka Ibuka, their first-round pick out of Ohio State last year, is potentially going to have a bigger breakout than he did even as a rookie here, because there's not much else. Mike Evans, this was a tough offseason for the Bucs to lose Mike Evans. They thought he would be there forever, retire, stay in Tampa Bay. That did not happen here with Evans. So he moves on to San Francisco. Chris Godwin has some injury issues that he's battling as he gets older. You have Jalen McMillan. They did bring back Cade Otton, but overall, this receiving core stays kind of put on where it was looking like here going in without Evans. And again, no tight end help of note here. No wide receiver to give them a little bit more impact to help Godwin and Ibuka. And they're sticking again with McMillan having a key role. So those look like the top three wide receivers, and then Otton helping out at tight end. So Baker Mayfield is already buried there. He's at QB 19 for a guy that just was up there with 40 touchdowns a couple years ago. It's hard to see that. But right now, the weapons are very limited here in Tampa for Baker Mayfield overall. So good news for Buka, not so good for Mayfield. Trying to find some other reliable guys, especially if Godwin and McMillan battle more injuries here in 2026. Now, one guy that's ranked much higher is Chris Olave. We're pivoting from our only quarterback back to wide receivers. Chris Olave is still on the board as the wide receiver 12 in half-point PPR redraft leagues. You'd have Jordan Tyson, who's going to cut into his workload. Keep in mind, they didn't have Rashid Shaheed or Brandon Cooks down the stretch, and the targets were going insane there early in the season for Chris Olave. They tapered off a little bit as Juwan Johnson got involved, and you had Tyler Shuck spreading the field a little bit better. But Jordan Tyson, a first-round wide receiver, same status as Olave in being selected. You think he's definitely a threat for what they do. So I look at this and say, hey, Tyson is going to get open and work down the field. You have Juwan Johnson as well, who was the second guy behind Olave. So now you have Johnson probably slide down to 3. Tyson still being a very good number 2. And don't forget, out of the backfield, Alvin Kamara was still pretty good, but now you add Travis Etienne Jr., a very dynamic receiver to this offense. I think he'll have a role doing that as well. So when you're looking at that, I mean, those are some targets to go around here. All of a sudden, in the Saints' offense, again, I like the pressure off of Olave a little bit. I don't think he's a double team type receiver anyway. In terms of like you try to take him out of the game, like you have to worry about these other guys. So that could help a little bit. We know that thing opens up on the other side, but there's a lot there that can compete with. Same thing with what Wilson is dealing with, his former Ohio State teammate. Olave definitely goes down. I think wide receiver 12 is a little too rich for going for him. I think you need to wait a little bit now with this developing situation with Tyson now in the mix for Tyler Shock. Now, let's go to a former Buccaneer, Rachaad White. He's now in Washington. This was not a good draft for him. I know they didn't invest highly in running back. They didn't get Jeremiah Love. But the number was RB39 on the board when I last checked for Rachaad White and half point PPR. Craytron Allen is one of my favorite sleeper backs from later in the draft. He really showed a little bit of steadiness that we didn't have from Nicholas Singleton. They're out of Penn State. Singleton ended up in a decent spot as well. But when you look at this, I look and say, hey, Rachaad White is going to be in trouble here because Rachaad White, his best role is going to be in third downs and receiving situations. You need somebody they can trust more in the early downs. To the red zone, Katron Allen would fit that profile. So that's where I'm really feeling it with this Bucks backfield, that White and Allen are going to be more of a split. So again, White was borderline RB3 at the moment. So I think his value even goes further down here with Katron Allen being the preferred commander's back. I think you want to go after. All right, we do need to look at a few backfields that were shaken up by this. And then one tight end, particularly, was on the losing end of what his team did in the draft. We'll reveal who that is just after this. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football continues looking at the backfields that are changing. You have J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, the two initial the Broncos running backs. They did not like this situation here because you had Jonah Coleman. He's now ranked as RB50. By the way, J.K. Dobbins is all the way down to RB35 in half point PPR. R.J. Harvey is at 29. So Jonah Coleman being at 50 says there's some promise here. Get another good zone blocking type runner here. That they're not happy with R.J. Harvey being a very inefficient runner. He had to really receive and be working in the red zone to really have the production last year. And then Dobbins has, of course, limitations to being only an early down back. He hasn't been much of a receiver any point in his career in his previous stop in Baltimore. So really you're looking at this and saying, hey, you got a big opportunity for Jonah Coleman. I really liked him. I thought he could be in the conversation for the third best back in his class behind Love and Price. But now you have some competition, and Sean Payton was going to open it up. Remember, Alvin Kamara took over, and we had that nice duo in New Orleans with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram for a while. I think he's kind of looking for that. So maybe it's not Dobbins necessarily. Dobbins is always hurt, by the way, so that also has some appeal for Jonah Coleman. It could be more coming in the form of Coleman and Harvey. Coleman maybe handling the early down, the red zone work, and Harvey becoming more of a factor as a receiver and kind of use more of that Kamara role that we know that New Orleans likes in its offense. So again, you have to say this was not a good draft for them. Coleman is a pretty decent overall back, and we want to watch him on the depth chart. Now, we know it was not a good draft for Zach Charbonnet. What does the pick of Jordyn Price with the 32nd overall pick in the first round say? Well, it says a couple things. It says they're not maybe so confident that Charbonnet is going to be back sooner rather than later from blowing up his knee there in the playoffs. And realizing, okay, Zach Charbonnet needs somebody he can run with. We don't like him running alone and handling the workload if and when he comes back here. So, look, they had to blow up this room. They didn't have anything there. They had Emmanuel Wilson, who was Green Bay's backup to Josh Jacobs, and George Kalani, kind of swing fullback type guy that they had from last year's roster. So now you get Kadarian Price. Zach Charbonnet is pretty much gone here. Price is all the way up to RB28, so almost in the RB2 consideration in the top 24. And then you have Charbonnet all the way down to RB44. So there's maybe not a lot of confidence that he'll be fully healthy to produce in the short term for the season with Price in the mix. So Price definitely becomes the more appealing Seahawks back, and you might be the only Seahawks back we're considering here. So interesting situation. Walker leaving, getting competition from Emmett Johnson. Now Charbonnet getting a different top back to compete with in Kadarian Price. All right, let's go to Arizona. This one is pretty obvious. There was a Jeremiah Love, but still, James Conner, if you had some hope on him, keeping him, I don't think you need to do that anymore. He's on the other side of 30 with injury issues. I think this is going to be a backfield quite a bit of Jeremiah Love in early downs and Tyler Algier, very similar to the role he had in Atlanta, spelling Bijan Robinson key situation. So that's how it goes. So Bijan Robinson, Algier, that situation, I think is going to play itself out again, but Love should have a bigger workload and share versus Algier in this new offense being the number 3 overall pick. So really looking at some things that he can do here that, look, he is a special all-around back. He's explosive. He can finish. He's just the guy that you're looking at and say, hey, he's going to be on the field as much as possible for 3 downs. So where does that factor in Conner? We really thought he was going to be released from the Cardinals. That didn't quite materialize. Algier, again, once they made that signing, I thought it was a good signing. I didn't think they were going to put everything on Algier, but when they did the situation with returning Conner, I said, oh, that's your backfield. But then too enticing there at number 3 is a rebuilding team that needs a big spark from one particular part of the offense. You had to say, hey, we got to go for Jeremiah Love and put him in there because he was really the best player available when the Cardinals picked. They're at number 3, definitely behind Fernando Mendoza and David Bailey. So they had to go after it, and now it's going to kind of have this offense have a little bit more clarity because it was definitely cloudier when you had Conner and Algier and what the workload was going to be. But now you're pretty sure Jeremiah Love is going to workhorse, and these guys are going to battle for his top backup role. I think it's Algier, and they could still move James Conner probably in a cut move here in camp. Finally, let's talk about the Eagles, and they drafted the second best tight end on the board. That's Eli Stowers of Vanderbilt. I thought there was a lot of teams that would go after him. I wanted him on Denver badly. I wanted maybe him in Chicago if that team moved Cole Kmet to have him out there with Colston Loveland, but that didn't materialize. The Bears went in a different direction. They had third tight end in Sam Roush, and they still had Cole Kmet here to pair with Colston Loveland. Now, look at Dallas Goedert. He's on the last legs. He's 31. He's on the other side of it here. So Stowers was a good stash here for the future, but Goedert easily could break down again. In a career year with scoring touchdowns, but Stowers is a very athletic dude and can make a lot of plays. So I think it'll be that Goedert remains the starter, but you'll see Stowers being groomed for a bigger role next year on this team. But definitely Goedert is someone you would be concerned about taking anywhere. He's all the way down, I believe, at tight end 17, 18. Stowers is not that far away. He's in the top 25 at tight end. But Stowers is a very plus athlete at what he's doing with Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia as his quarterback. You also had the situation develop with the Eagles where you're going to lose A.J. Brown. So you do have Mekhi Lemon, but he's a smaller target, more in the vein of Devonta Smith, and you just add Ontavian Wicks, but you do have a void for some big targets to come down, some key passes here in the new offense of Sean Mannion for Jalen Hurts. So Dallas Goedert, look, I don't want any part of Goedert here, but I'm interested about Stowers in this landing spot. And definitely these considerations are also what you need to make for dynasty leagues as well. Who are the biggest veteran losers that you're trying to jettison? I think Dallas Goedert, even in tight end premium leagues, is someone that you may not want to invest in too much anymore. So, again, turn the page to Stowers. He could be on the field sooner rather than later. Again, they need weaponry. And again, there's going to be some experience issues with Malachi Lemon, but also, or Mekhi Lemon, I should say, and also just in terms of trying to be redundant with the size and speed and skill set of Devonta Smith on the inside. They need to kind of a bigger target to really help. I don't think they're going to put it all in Wicks. I think they'll move in with a little bit more 12 personnel concepts with Manny in here. So two tight end potential here. So Stowers really is too good of an athlete to ignore as just being a pick later that, hey, it's a flyer on the athletic guy. I think it's legitimately we're eyeing a lot to be Dallas Goedert's successor in 2027. So to recap the 10 biggest losers, veterans that lost value with the fantasy football community with the draft. Kenneth Walker III with Emmett Johnson now in Kansas City. Kenny Sadiq and Omar Cooper really clouding up the target share for Garrett Wilson, Geno Smith, and the Jets. DK Metcalf has to do with them adding not one but two receivers in Pittsburgh, Michael Pittman and Jeremy Bernard. So you have those two guys in the mix there. And then going a little bit deeper, you go that backfield with Rashad White, the Commanders. Katron Allen looks like a promising person. Chris Olave with number one competition, Jordyn, Tyson, New Orleans. Baker Mayfield not getting enough help there from the Bucks. You have the Broncos situation with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey facing some competition for Jonah Coleman. The same is going here for Jordyn Price and Jeremiah Love taking over their backfield. So any value and hope you had for Zach Charbonnet and James Conner out the door here. Tyler Algier returns to handcuff status. And then Stowers is a stash tight end with some upside behind Dallas Goedert. All right. Thanks so much for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For tomorrow, we'll have some more breakdowns of the 2026 NFL Draft, how it affects your consensus half PPR rankings, and how it might also shape up down the line for Dynasty. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Fantasy Football so you get all the latest updates here. You can find me at sportingnews.com. You can find Michelle at NFL.com. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Fantasy Football ad-free, plus you'll get members-only Discord access, which is going to be huge come draft time, and so much more. Head to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com to join the club and find out more about our very special club, the Everydayer Club, that we'd like you to be a part of here in 2026. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. See you later, and bye, all. We'll see you with Michelle on the next show.